Welcome and welcome back, everybody, to the OK Grognard Show. Today is Monday, March 6th, 2023, 10 a.m. Central in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And I thought it was time to take a look in on the errant Dungeon 23 project I've been working on. And when I say errant, it is to say I'm woefully behind on what I was planning on doing. But good reasons, and there's still time to catch up. In any event, the uh, the project was being done differently than the main Dungeon 23 idea anyway. The idea being you do a room a day, and when you get to the end of the month, you've got a level of a dungeon. You do it again in the next month and the next month, and by the end of 2023, the Dungeon 23 project then yields a 12 level mega dungeon anyway. Not sure. Not sure if everybody would call that a mega dungeon, although seems pretty mega to me. I've seen some pretty sweeping projects. In any event, what I started off with was a sketchy idea that I would work on a huge map. That is a map that I grab from Dyson Logos and fill it in a day at a time over time. And then I thought it would define itself at some point, and I kept running up against situations where I had to redo parts that I had previously addressed because as I began to get an idea of the shape that the entire project was going to be in, I had to reorientate the maps and the map, add a second map because it wouldn't be enough to get through the whole year. And in any event, I think the point of it being that I also wanted to place it somewhere in my world. So to have a quick look, here's an old 1990s, late 1990s, maybe early 2000s too, NBOS software map. And you can see it's just very basic. The fractals involved in these early random software maps were, in the images they produced, not the kind of thing you could use for publication. Nevertheless, it is still what I would call a a map for me to keep myself oriented as I create. And if you recognize the Great Mouth Bay here, you know that much of the Grimwald campaigns takes place here on the northwest peninsula of this landmass here. But you see this red down over here, and you'll notice it's red because I took a screenshot of this. I wanted to decide where to place this project, so I picked the location here. There's a huge river that comes down out of the mountains. It's several rivers that connect and then becomes this single river that empties out into the ocean at the north end of this landmass. But up here, I had often decided that there was going to be a pair of cities, pair of dwarven cities up in the mountains that had been long since abandoned, and I actually used them for a couple of adventures. One that I ran at GaryCon pre-COVID, and What a shame. We got ourselves a little bit of a spam bot here. We'll have to block him and get him out of there. In any event, the two dwarven cities were long since abandoned. I used them as the basis of an adventure some time back. They weren't very well defined. The idea was that these twin cities built by the dwarves would somewhat mirror one another, and the one to the east would be known as Diurnus, and the one to the west would be known as Nocturnus, and they would have a lot of similarities, and they would become a sort of a mega dungeon, but I'd never gone much beyond that. So this seemed like a good opportunity to do that. And then what I wound up doing with this was to take a Dyson Logos map, the one in the middle of the screen here, and I flipped it and twisted it, and it became the one to the east. And you notice that the two maps were somewhat off from one another. One was a little higher on the previous world map. Well, you'll note here, if you look at the where the cursor is, upper left, there's a river that comes out of this. You'll notice that a river goes into this one, kind of in the middle. So this is why the maps don't line up perfectly. But you'll also notice in the lower right of the central map and the lower left of the left-hand map, they have similar entryways. And this was the idea. Make them somewhat similar, but not completely similar. Not perfect mirrors of one another. And create a sort of a double mega dungeon that where both will complement each other, and yet they will both be huge abandoned dwarven settlements, cities from way back when. So now that these are finally oriented, I can get back to the business of dealing with individual rooms, and that's going to be the part that's going to be more satisfying. Now that I have my two maps, I have them oriented for my actual campaign setting. I have them orientated to one to the other. I can now proceed without the thought that I'm going to have to keep going back and making adjustments to earlier ones based on new revelations and new changes. I've also got some ideas of some of the dungeon dressing that will go on in here. I often wonder how do individuals, I mean, it's all well and good to say every dwarf knows every stone and level. I don't like that idea. That seems a little too convenient for explaining how they all know what they know. Now, they might say that, a dwarf who is from here or is in one of these complexes might say, every dwarf knows every. They might actually say that, but I thought there should be a more practicable explanation. And one of the ones I came up with was a sort of a wainscoting thing, where if there was a banner of stone midway up the wall in all the finished areas, because, plain old stone get a little boring, right? There had to be some sort of accoutrement, some sort of decoration, and why not make it practical as well? So the idea being that on the first level of Diurnus, you'll have a series of carvings that look like the sun and the moon in the other place. And on the first level between the suns, you'd have, say, a single sword. And on the second level, you'd have a pair of axes. And on the third level, on and on, so that every level, first through seventh, would have something else. There is an upper level above the first, and that would just have the sun or the moon. And this way you've got and this would only be technically only in areas that are finished. So in any area where it's an unfinished cave or cavern, you might not have anything at all in some sections, or in some sections, depending on how new they are. If some of this has been carved out after it's been long abandoned, that's one thing. If some of this is connected to, and has always been connected to, the actual worked areas, you might have a placard periodically in the wall in cavernous sections that denotes the level that it's associated with. Anyway, these are the thoughts that kind of pull the whole thing together like a Lebowski rug. So hopefully I can now proceed on some of this with the idea. Colorization still going on when it comes to the Nocturnus map on the left, and I'm looking forward to that, but there's no hurry on that because, quite frankly, I've got my hands full with the Diurnus map on the right in any event, so that'll keep me busy for a while. All that being said, just a quick update on the Dungeon 23. We've got a we could turn that off for a minute. We've got a update 2 on GM's Day. We had a great time at Lake Geneva Games. Al ran a tournament on Saturday, a Modern Horizons 2 Magic tournament. There was a lot of 40K play and Commander play all day. Yesterday, Wayne brought a gathering of gamers to First Sunday, which I think is going to be an ongoing thing. Had a decent crowd, 15 to 20 people were there, which is pretty good for once moving the place, once moving the event. Used to be third Sunday up at Elkhorn Pizza Ranch, and then it was third Saturday for a while, and then it wasn't working out up there, so they needed to move the place. So board gaming day early this week. I'll be running my first edition campaign, so I'll get my GM's Day game in. Anything that's on or about GM's Day counts as a GM's Day game. I guess that's it to say. Thank you very much for checking this out. Please do subscribe and all that other stuff. In fact, let's go through the panels and say the show streams live on Twitch each Monday at 10 a.m. Central. It's then archived on YouTube. Follow the channel. Chime in on the chat. By all means, subscribe to the YouTube channel and give us thumbs up on any videos you like and enjoy. Feel free to make comments too. Thanks to our Patreon supporters, Tom Tellis of Fat Dragon Games, Carlos Lysing of Castle Entertainment, Heath Farndon of the D&D 20, Dave O'Brien of 4 Quacks Games, and Shade Bradley, DM Extraordinaire. This has been the OK Grognard Show from beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Bye-bye.